Hello, this is Tom Coy. I'm the covenant pastor at the Milton Presbyterian Church in Sharps, Virginia. And this is our midweek meditation. It's a weekly piece that I put out, runs from 8 to 10 minutes, and it focuses on a particular aspect of the Christian faith and what it is and why it's important. And lately, we've been working our way through the Lord's Prayer, which is a universal prayer that is shared by all Christians everywhere, Orthodox, Christian, Pentecostal, Protestant, no matter the variety, no matter the kind of Christianity might be, the Lord's Prayer is there to be found in the worship of those groups. And we have worked our way through 8 installments. Today is the 9th and final installment. We come to what's called the Thescription. For thine is the kingdom, power, and glory forever. Amen. So let's look a little more closely at this part of the Lord's Prayer. So we end the Lord's Prayer when we recite a segment that scholars call the Thescription. It goes this way: for thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. Now, I say it with a Presbyterian rhythm. Other traditions in Christendom have a different rhythm on those words. It is a fitting conclusion, both intellectually and emotionally, to this prayer, for it summarizes the prayer's spirit and content and does so with a poetic flourish. There is something satisfying in the way it sounds. Interestingly, scholars have long thought that this part of the Lord's Prayer may actually have been a later addition. They cite 2 reasons. One is that the prayer, the earliest Greek manuscripts of Matthew's Gospel do not have it, and we've been pulling the prayer from Matthew's version of it. Luke also has a version. But this is Matthew's, and Matthew's version sometimes does not have that inscription. These versions have the prayer ending with, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. The other reason is that the Gospel of Luke, which also has the Lord's Prayer, does not have the inscription either. From where then does it come? Well, perhaps it originates in the church's worship. Jesus teaches the Lord's Prayer not that it should be the end of all prayer, but the beginning. And he gives it as a foundation, and Christians like you and me have faithfully built upon it for 2,000 years. The inscription is possibly added because it draws the prayer to a graceful conclusion. To end simply with, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil, seems stark, even abrupt. There's not even an amen. The inscription is fuller and more complete. And it is humble. It does not attempt to contribute anything new to the teaching of Jesus, but simply reaffirms what he has already said. By this point in the prayer, we know how he feels about God, his kingdom, power, and glory. We know that Jesus reveres the Holy One. We know that he sees God's authority both in the vast expanses of the universe as well as the intimate depths of our own human hearts. We know also that Jesus believes there is no place where God is not. There is no thing or no one beyond God's influence. Not now, not ever. And so we can end the prayer and this series of faith reflections by affirming, for thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. Thank you for tuning in to this series of reflections. We end one series today, but next week we begin another. We focused on the Lord's Prayer for the last 9 weeks, but now we're going to open up a series on worship, the worship service in particular. This is one thing that Christians do nowadays in this COVID environment in a variety of ways, not just in person in a building, but we're doing it outside. We're doing it on conference calls. We're doing it with drive-in worship. We're doing it with Zoom meeting formats. We're doing it with Facebook Live. We're doing it by videos. And I've been doing that quite a bit with the church I serve. There's so many ways that worship can happen. There's so many ways. But what is supposed to happen in worship? What are the components of it? These we're going to look at one by one in the next several weeks. So next week we're going to look at the worship service, its foundations. Until then, take care. God bless. See you then.